During the War of 1812, one of the many individual battles that took place was the Battle of Baltimore. The Battle of Baltimore took place on September 12th through 14th in 1814. Baltimore, Maryland was the third largest city in the U.S. at the time and had one of the best harbors on the East Coast, making it a prime target for the British.
Because of this, Samuel Smith of the Maryland militia ordered the town to be fortified in mid-1813. More than 10,000 troops congregated around the city, particularly Fort McHenry, star-shaped and made of brick. Vice Administrator Sir Alexander Cochrane, a British officer selected to co-operate the stronghold on the Chesapeake, was unaware of America's preparations. He plotted a two-pronged assault against the city in accordance with General Ross, his comrade. Ross was to land on the North American peninsula and move against the land defenses, while ships of the British Royal Navy were to attack Fort McHenry.
The British flotilla arrived at the North American peninsula as planned on September 11th in the early afternoon. So as to determine the intentions of the British, Samuel Smith ordered a brigade to North Point, who were to be led by John Sticker. By nightfall, John Sticker's men had assembled at a narrow point halfway down the North Point Peninsula. That night, the British infantry strike came ashore, and by sunrise, 4,700 men were ready to march.
By late morning, Sticker's men discovered the British only a few miles away. Sticker then braced himself and his troop for an attack. Surprisingly, none came. By the next morning, Sticker was provoked to start a fight with Britain. He did so, and General Ross of Britain led the fight, soon after to be killed. Soon, 2 British units routed Sticker's brigade and captured 2 guns, killed at least 3 Americans, and took 50 prisoner. British troops only lost half as many. Meanwhile, Fort McHenry had British naval ships less than 3 miles away.
Aboard one of the British ships was Francis Scott Key. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer in the early American years. He was a Federalist and did not want the War of 1812. Many buildings were burned or destroyed during this war. Also, many people were taken prisoner, including Key's good friend Dr. William Beans. Beans was a prominent physician during the time and took care of many of the wounded soldiers. Beans was taken because he was thought to be sympathizing for the British, but then was found out that he wasn't. General Ross ordered for his capture, and Beans was arrested along with 3 other men, Robert Bowie, William Hill, and Philip Weems.
These men were arrested for capturing British deserters and locking them up. The 3 other men other than Beans were released. Friends of Beans sought for Francis Scott Key to get his release. Key and John Stuart Skinner tried to help get Beans' release. They went to have dinner with Ross and even negotiated for his release. Ross first refused release, but after seeing letters from wounded soldiers, reconsidered. Beans was greatly thanked and still needed. Beans was released, but still held out 8 miles from Baltimore because of all the American men who knew too much of British tactics. They were kept in Chesapeake Bay. They were kept till the end of the Battle of Baltimore on September 13th through 14th in 1814. While aboard a British ship, Key watched gun shells near Fort McHenry. The flag stayed strong throughout the night, but soon it was covered in shadows, and Key was no longer able to view it. When he woke up into the morning, he rose to the sight of the flag still up, having been perseverant through the night.
Right. Inspired by the flag still flying above the ramparts, Key wrote a very emotional poem called The Defense of Fort McHenry. The poem soon became popular and was later known as the Star-Spangled Banner. Ironically, it was put to the tune of a British song called To Anacreon in Heaven. The United States government officially declared it a national anthem in 1931, and it was signed off by President Herbert Hoover